The movie opens with a man in an empty apartment in Paris. He's been there for 2 days, constantly watching a building across the street. This man is known as the killer, a skilled hitman who's waiting for his next target. But there's one issue: he doesn't know when the target will appear. This leaves him with no choice but to keep watch around the clock. To pass the time, the killer does yoga and goes out to grab some food. While he's out, he receives a call from Hodges, the person who hired him. Hodges tells him that the target might arrive in 2 days, but there's no guarantee. It could be earlier or later. This lack of clear information frustrates the killer, making him angrily slam his phone to the ground. Back in the empty apartment, the killer resumes his surveillance. He keeps reminding himself that he needs to stay emotionless if he wants to succeed. Known for his secret log of completed hits, he has taken down many targets without ever being caught. One evening, as he adjusts his gun, someone approaches his door. Instantly, the killer aims his weapon, ready to fire. However, the person decides not to enter and simply throws away some trash before leaving. Later, the killer tries to rest but is too anxious about missing the target. To stay alert, he sets his watch to beep every 5 minutes. As he waits, he notices signs that the target's arrival is near. A servant starts preparing a room across the street. This prompts the killer to get everything ready, including his rifle. After some time, the killer spots his target, a wealthy, older businessman with businesses all over the world. But the man isn't alone. He's with a woman, an entertainer. The killer aims carefully, but just as he pulls the trigger, his hand shakes. The bullet misses the target and strikes the woman instead. Realizing his mistake, the killer quickly gathers his equipment and leaves the empty building. He jumps onto a motorcycle, getting rid of any evidence along the way by tossing items into the sewer and a parked garbage truck. When he reaches a bridge, he dismounts, crosses it on foot, and throws his helmet into the river below. Back at the target's location, guards are already investigating the attack, and the police start monitoring the airport. This makes it impossible for the killer to leave France immediately. He creates a fake identity and buys a flight ticket to escape. While waiting for his flight, he receives an angry call from Hodges, who is furious about the failed mission. Hodges warns him that he must finish the job, or there will be severe consequences. On the flight, the killer notices a suspicious man watching him closely, making him feel uneasy. When he reaches the transit airport, he realizes the man is still following him. To be cautious, the killer decides to stay at an airport hotel overnight, keeping an eye on the man in case he needs to confront him. Fortunately, the man doesn't make a move, and the killer manages to board another flight to the Dominican Republic, planning to hide there. Upon arrival, he drives straight to his girlfriend Magdala's countryside house in his favorite car. It's a long drive, but when he finally reaches her gate, he notices strange footprints and cigarette butts scattered around. Alarmed by this, he grabs his weapon and quietly enters the house, preparing for the worst. Inside the house, the killer found the living room in complete disarray, with furniture overturned and a bloodstain on the floor. However, Magdala was nowhere to be found. Fearing the worst, he immediately rushed to the nearest hospital, where his suspicions were confirmed. Magdala was seriously injured and in intensive care. Desperate for answers, the killer spoke to Marcus, one of Magdala's close friends, to learn what had happened. Marcus explained that 2 strangers, a strong man and a thin woman, had arrived at Magdala's house in a taxi and attacked her. Furious and filled with guilt, the killer promised Marcus that nothing like this would ever happen to Magdala again. When Magdala finally regained consciousness, she reassured the killer that she hadn't revealed anything about his true identity, even though her attackers had tried to force her to talk. Enraged by the attack, the killer returned home and dug up his stash of hidden weapons in the backyard. The following morning, he began investigating the attackers. He visited the taxi company that might have transported them and intimidated the owner into revealing information. Terrified, the owner disclosed that a driver named Leo Rodriguez had taken the attackers to Magdala's place. The next day, the killer tracked down Leo, who was parked by the roadside, waiting for passengers. Pretending to be a regular customer, the killer entered the taxi, sitting quietly in the passenger seat while readying his weapon. He asked Leo to drive to a secluded area, then pointed his gun at him. Demanding answers, the killer pressured Leo to describe the two passengers he had dropped off near a hidden spot in the woods, just as Marcus had described. Trembling with fear, Leo confirmed the details. To keep his identity safe, the killer decided to kill Leo before setting off to find the attackers. Afterward, the killer flew to New Orleans to confront Hodges. He rented a van to outsmart the tight security at Hodges' office. Before approaching the building, he stopped at his storage unit to retrieve fake IDs and a counterfeit license plate to evade police detection. He also bought some tools to disguise himself as a recycling worker, allowing him to slip into Hodges' office without raising suspicion. The killer managed to slip into Hodges' office without any trouble. He immediately pointed his gun at Hodges' secretary, Dolores, and demanded that she take him to her boss. Terrified and held at gunpoint, Dolores led the killer straight into Hodges' office. Once inside, the killer tied Hodges securely to his chair while locking Dolores in the bathroom. With Hodges captured, the killer began questioning him about the recent attack on Magdala. Hodges insisted that he had not ordered the attack, blaming it on the killer's failure to complete the Paris mission. Furious, the killer smashed Hodges' laptop, destroying records of their past missions. He then used a tool he had brought to hurt Hodges, trying to force him to reveal who had attacked Magdala. Unfortunately, Hodges was already too badly wounded from a previous beating, leaving him unable to provide the answers the killer needed. Realizing he wouldn't get more information from Hodges, the killer turned to Dolores. She offered to tell him everything she knew about the attackers, on one condition. She asked him to make her death look like an accident so her child could receive life insurance money. Reluctantly, the killer agreed. He placed Hodges' body in a large trash bin and took it to Dolores' house. At Dolores' house, she revealed a hidden stash of files containing details about various contract killers hired by Hodges, including the two who had hurt Magdala. She also disclosed the identity of the main client, the one who had hired the killer through Hodges to eliminate the old businessman in Paris. Satisfied with the information, the killer staged Dolores' death by twisting her neck as she descended the stairs, making it appear as if she had fallen accidentally. That night, the killer returned to his storage unit to dismember Hodges' body. He then boarded a ferry and disposed of some of the body parts in the sea, while burying the remaining parts elsewhere to ensure the police wouldn't be able to piece together what had happened. The next day, the killer traveled to Florida to hunt down one of Magdala's attackers, a muscular man known as the Brute. He discovered where the Brute lived and spotted him walking with a group of friends and a pit bull. Realizing the dog could interfere with his plans, the killer bought some meat mixed with sleeping pills to put the dog to sleep. He then followed the Brute and his friends to a bar and waited until they returned home. Once they were back, the killer tossed the drugged meat to the pit bull. However, things didn't go as smoothly as he hoped. The Brute sensed someone was after him, leading to a brutal hand-to-hand fight. With his extensive combat skills, the killer managed to overpower the Brute and ultimately shot him dead. The loud gunshot startled the pit bull, which tried to attack the killer. He managed to stop the dog, then set the Brute's house on fire to eliminate any evidence of the murder. A few days later, the killer flew to New York to take down another one of Magdala's attackers, a woman known as the Expert. He parked his car near her home and waited patiently for her to leave. After a few hours, he saw her get into a taxi, so he discreetly followed. She ended up at a fancy restaurant. The killer entered and approached the Expert, who immediately realized he was there to kill her. Calmly, she invited him to share a meal with her, claiming it was delicious. But the killer refused, suspecting the food might be poisoned. He persuaded her to leave the restaurant with him, and once they reached a nearby park, he shot her. A few days later, the killer returned to Paris to confront the person who had hired him, suspecting they had collaborated with Hodges to punish him for the failed mission. He tracked the old client to a luxury apartment building, but was unable to unlock the door. To break in, he ordered a fake key online and waited for it to arrive. In the meantime, he tried to blend in by signing up for a gym membership in the building. He also bought illegal weapons from the criminal underworld, preparing for his final confrontation. The next morning, the killer received the fake key he had ordered. He returned to the luxury apartment building, using a worker's ID card to copy the key pattern and gain access to the client's apartment. Once inside, he confronted the client, showing him his contract killer ID card. At first, the client seemed confused, but he soon realized who the killer was, Hodges' hired hitman. Fear crept over the client's face as he admitted that Hodges had pressured him into paying an extra $150,000 after the botched job in Paris. The killer then tried to get the client to talk about the attack on Magdala, hoping for more answers. But the client appeared genuinely puzzled, showing no signs of involvement in hurting Magdala. Realizing this, the killer chose to spare his life, concluding that Hodges had orchestrated the attack. The film ends with the killer returning to the Dominican Republic, reuniting with his girlfriend, Magdala, who was slowly recovering. The two appeared relieved and at peace, finally free from the danger that had haunted them. With revenge complete, they embraced a sense of calm and happiness. So the moral of the story is, if you're a hitman, make sure you have a good yoga routine, double-check your aim, and maybe hire a better personal assistant, because revenge is exhausting and full of unexpected plot twists.